everyone, and welcome back to MFTV. I'm Karolyn, and I'm dropping in today to share a process video for a cute idea that I had that features the Caticorn stamp set and coordinating dies and the Peek-a-Boo Wheel Die-namics. The final result is a color-changing Caticorn, which is such a fun and unexpected surprise. It's easy to create, and I can't wait to show you how I did it. I started with a piece of my favorite kind of masking material from Express It that measures 5.5 inches by 4.25 inches. This is my favorite, but any full sheet masking material will work just the same. I die cut a circle aperture that measures about 1/4 inch smaller than the wheel die from the Peek-a-Boo Wheel Die-namics. Once the aperture is die cut, I just peel a small bit of the paper backing away, adhere it to a smooth white panel that measures the same as the masking material, and I use my fingers to press the masking material to the panel as I peel the backing paper away. I particularly love this brand of masking material because it doesn't tear the paper when you remove it. You can easily lift it to remove creases and bubbles, and then reapply it, and it's very durable so that almost always you can reuse masks multiple times. I've temporarily centered the wheel die from the Peek-a-Boo Wheel Die-namics with the circle aperture, and I'll use my pencil to mark the center hole of the die. I'll use this mark to help guide me while I create an ink blended rainbow. I'll start with some Razzle dye ink, and I'll blend until the color is built up to a bright and vibrant pink. Next, I'll blend some lemon drop dye ink onto the aperture, and I'll overlap it with the pink to create an area of pink, orange, and yellow. Next, I'll add some summer splash, and again, I'll overlap it with the yellow to create some green and blue. And lastly, I'll overlap some grape jelly over both the Razzle and summer splash areas until all of the colors are blended nicely. I'll go back over a few of them to perfect the blend and even out the colors. I'm using my stamp chamois to wipe off the excess ink because I don't want it to transfer onto my die cutting plates. I'll use the center mark of the ink blended aperture to center the wheel die, and I'll secure it in place with a couple pieces of washi tape, and I'll run it through my die cutting machine. I'll use my tweezers to remove the remaining circle of masking material from the wheel edge. Here, I'm blending some Sweet Tooth pigment ink onto a 4 inch by 5.25 inch panel of Summer Splash cardstock, and I'm using the mini cloud edges stencil to create a cloudy sky. I'll flip the stencil from edge to edge as I move from top to bottom to get some variation in the clouds. I die cut some additional clouds from a smooth white panel that measures 4 inches by 5.25 inches, and I use the Stitch Cloud Edges Dynamics. I die cut the first one off camera, and I'm using that to calculate the height of the second set of clouds. I trimmed a piece of acetate that measures 2.5 inches by 3 inches, and I'll place that inside my Mini Misty. I'll center the sitting Caticorn onto the acetate, and I'll pick up the stamp with the door of my Mini Misty. I'm inking the stamp up using some StazOn Jet Black ink. StazOn is a solvent ink that will adhere to the acetate and will become permanent after a few seconds drying time. I'll give it a good rub with my fingers to transfer the ink evenly, and then I'll carefully lift the door of my Mini Misty to access the stamped image. The acetate usually sticks to the stamp, so I carefully peel it away. I'll set it aside to fully dry, but this won't take long at all. I temporarily place the cloudy sky panel, the clouds, and the ink blended circle into my Mini Misty so that I can position the Caticorn stamp where I want him to be. Once he's positioned perfectly, I'll close my Mini Misty door to pick up the stamp. I'll remove the clouds, but before I stamp, I'll leave the ink blended wheel in place, and I'll mark that center hole to help me reposition everything later. I'll remove it, and then I can stamp the cat onto the cloudy panel using black licorice hybrid ink. I'll use the coordinating Caticorn die to die cut it from the cloudy sky panel. I'm applying some tape runner adhesive to the back of the cloudy sky panel around the Caticorn aperture, and then I'll flip it over to the front and align the aperture with the acetate stamped Caticorn image. And you can see that when I place the ink blended wheel behind the acetate image, all of the bright and vibrant colors show through, which is exactly what I wanted to achieve. Here, I'm using my piercing tool to punch through the acetate to the hole on the wheel. Off camera, I use the Caticorn die to die cut some silver glitter cardstock, and I'm using my scissors to trim off the Caticorn's horn. I want it to extend a bit beyond the stamped lines in order to hide the brad that I'll use to adhere the wheel to the back of the cloudy sky panel. I'll just trim it off a bit using my scissors, and once I'm happy with the size, I'll adhere it to some double-sided foam tape and I'll use my scissors to trim around the outside edge of the horn. Next, I'll use the circle from the Peek-a-Boo Wheel Die-namics to cut a partial opening to provide easy access to the zigzagged edge of the Peek-a-Boo wheel. I'm marking quarter marks with a Sharpie to help me position the die, and then I'll add some washi tape to hold it in place while I run it through my die cutting machine. I should mention that I secured the wheel to the cloudy sky panel with a brad before I positioned and die cut the half circle. Now I can permanently secure the ink blended wheel to the cloudy sky panel with a brad, and I'll insert the brad from the back to the front in order to minimize the bulk of the brad head on the front of the panel. I'll use the end of my piercing tool to make sure that the brad prongs are as flat as possible, and then I'll use my die snips to snip off the end of the bottom prong. I'll leave just enough of the prong to make sure the wheel doesn't separate from the panel, and now I can adhere the horn in place. It's a little bit bulky under the prong, but the foam tape allows the horn to mold into the prongs. It doesn't take too much fussing to set it in place, and a quick turn of the wheel shows that everything is working like magic. I've adhered some thin 3D foam squares to the back of the smaller cloud die cut, and I'll adhere that to the taller cloud bank. I'll add more thin 3D foam squares to the back of the assembled clouds, and I'll adhere them to the bottom of the cloudy sky panel. In the interest of saving time, I did some of the work off camera. I stamped, die cut, and colored the rainbow image from the Caticorn stamp set, and I'm adhering it to the cloud bank using some mini foam squares. I also die cut 2 clouds using the Caticorn Die-namics that I'll use to embellish my card. And I stamped one of the sentiments from the Caticorn stamp set onto some lemon drop cardstock using Versamark, and then I heat embossed it with silver embossing powder and die cut it using the smallest of the fishtail flag trio dynamics. I'll adhere one of the cloud die cuts to the cloudy sky panel using tape runner adhesive, and then I'll adhere the sentiment banner over the top of the cloud. I'll adhere the second cloud with a thin 3D foam square just under the sentiment banner. I've added some foam squares to the back of the assembled front panel, and I'll adhere it to a 4 1/4 inch by 11 inch Summer Splash card base that I've scored at 5 1/2 inches, folded in half, and perfected the crease with my Teflon foam folder. I'm using one of the arrow stamps from the interactive label stamp set to stamp some movement prompts onto the edge of the card base, just outside the wheel. Since the recipient can turn the wheel either direction, I'll add the same arrow but in the opposite direction. As a final touch, I added some of my favorite sparkling clear sequins, and you can see that when I turn the wheel, the Caticorn magically changes colors, which reminds me of those mood rings that we all used to have back in the 70s. Thanks so much for watching my video today. I hope you enjoyed it and that you'll create your own magical color-changing Caticorn for yourself. I've listed and linked all of the MFT products that I use below in the description box. Have a great day, and please stay safe and well.